This part of the presentation is designed as a display of the best practices that I've been using in my courses over the past year. By showing you samples of these strategies, you'll see how I've implemented them, and you'll hear testimony of their effectiveness. I'm going to highlight 4 of the best practices that I've implemented with my students in the past year. First, I'll describe and display my teaching retreats. Next, I'll show you my teaching field trips. And then third, I'll introduce you to my living history modules. And then fourth and finally, I'll show you my newest strategy of utilizing social networking as a very effective course enhancement. So let me begin by describing my teaching retreats. I invite my students to sign up for a Friday or Saturday in groups of about 7 or 8. We mimic an entire school day. Each student takes a turn teaching a section of the day, while the others and I pretend to be children. I assign student roles, such as the sleeper, or the teacher's admirer, the texters, some with ADHD, perhaps the precocious child, others such as that. And I'll often impose challenging situations and teachable moments, such as power outages, tornado drills, lockdowns, maybe even the aftermath of a tragic student death. This learning module gives my students the opportunity to test their adaptability, their class management, and their poise, and all of this in an artificial and supportive context where together we can process their choices, their leadership, and their teaching style. Now, many of my students have indicated that these teaching retreats have been the most valuable aspect of their experiences in my class.
You better do the teaching retreat. If you do any module in this class, it needs to be the teaching retreat. It was the most fun I had doing anything in a long time. Teaching retreat is extremely fun.
I want to suggest that everybody does the teaching retreat module because that was my favorite and it is absolutely one of the best modules.
The teacher's retreat was also a lot of fun. You learned a lot doing that. I highly recommend that as well.
The second of my best practices that I want to highlight here are my teaching field trips. The students who participate in teaching field trips choose a location somewhere in Columbus to use as the backdrop for one of their practice lessons. Let's take a look at a collage of a number of students giving practice lessons during a teaching field trip.
Started in 1926 when they built it. Baseball has actually been played here since 1909.
We're out the way from the last battle of the Civil War in Columbus at the bridge down there. So we're right here in the heart of the city of Columbus.
work with you, and if you could move in just a little more.
they've been, the person attacked has either been in the water or right next to it.
First off, I want everybody to give yourselves a quick little golf clap. Quick little golf clap, doesn't have to be loud. Just for everybody, you guys all did a fantastic job.
I opted to go on the bike trip. The bike trip was by far the highlight and the best module.
I did the bike trip. It was phenomenal. Loved it.
I chose the bicycle trip, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
I picked the bike tour. That was a lot of fun. I highly recommend it.
Go on the bike trip. Go for the ride. Go around, look at Columbus, and pick something historic to talk about.
The third of my best practices that I'd like to present to you is a history teaching method called living history. Living history is a technique in which you turn your classroom into somewhat of a time machine. Take your students back to the time and place that you're studying to give them a real sense of what it felt like to be there, how the people thought, what they thought about technology and religion, economics and arts. Living history is such an effective technique because it's active learning. It appeals to multiple intelligences, and it's so interdisciplinary. But most of all, this is an effective technique because students find it, by and large, to be fun. So in my courses, I offer my students the opportunity to form living history teams, to rehearse, and then to take their presentation into a local school for a performance. Here's our situation. Here's our context. We're going to pretend that we're on the college campus in Ohio in 1970, right? The college campus is called Kent State University. And something happened there in 1970 having to do with Vietnam and protest and civil rights and that sort of thing, where college students were killed, right? That event has just happened. Has just happened. Now, here's the hard part for you guys. I need you to do as best as you can to forget everything that you know about 2011 and your whole life. I need you to think of yourself as being back there because we're going to ask you your opinions of things.
I will put them boys down because, again, I won't start violence, but I learn quickly. A man comes at you with a knife, you come at him with a gun. If he tries to put you in the hospital, you put him in the morgue. I will never start anything, but I will finish it.
Matter of fact, some of my records are already, they should be in the record books, but they can't. You hear a lot about Babe Ruth, but you don't hear a lot about me, C.J. Gibson.
We're trying to work forward as women. My goodness, there's nothing wrong with wearing a skirt above your knees, is there? No. Do you wear skirts above your knees?
Go out and about.
Yes?
Beautiful
Come on now. You sound just like my daddy saying I'm the devil for cutting my hair short. I'm not no lady of the night. I am an actress in the talkies. So you must be all right.
And then when they have their own classroom, I find that many of my students take this strategy and implement it successfully in their own classrooms with their own students. After Libby Parker learned about living history in my classroom, she took it back to her own classroom, where the local newspaper gave her some really nice coverage. The fourth and the last of my best practices that I want to share with you is my implementation of social networking in all of my classes. College-age students are very familiar with the convention of social networking, such as Facebook. I don't use Facebook for my classes, but I use something that's very similar, but gives me total control over the class, and it's limited to the members of my classes. These social networks allow the students to blog, to respond to each other, to get their assignments, to post questions, to chat with each other. This student-friendly media provides a wonderful opportunity for students to stay in touch with each other and with me after they leave campus. This concludes the portion of the presentation, which is a sampling of 4 of my best practices. Now I invite you to click on the link right below that says Scholarship, so we can proceed to the next stage of this report.